The gunshot cracked through the midnight air of Silver Creek, Colorado, in 1876, jerking Sheriff Zachariah Powell from a half-sleep at his desk to full alertness. He grabbed his hat and revolver, charging into the dusty street where a woman in a torn dress stood over a motionless body, smoking gun still in her trembling hand. Isabella Keller had never meant to kill a man her first night in town. The blood spreading across the stranger's shirt matched the crimson of the setting sun that had welcomed her to Silver Creek just hours before. She'd come seeking a new beginning, not trouble. But trouble, it seemed, had found her anyway. "Drop the weapon, madam," Sheriff Powell commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 10 years wearing the badge. His weathered face, framed by a salt and pepper beard, revealed nothing of his thoughts as he approached. Isabella slowly placed the gun on the ground, her blue eyes never leaving the sheriff's face. He tried to, the words caught in her throat. "I had no choice." Zachariah examined the scene with practiced efficiency. The dead man was Hank Mullins, a drifter known for causing problems. The woman before him was a stranger, slender but strong, with honey blonde hair escaping a once neat bun. Her dress was expensive but practical, dusty from travel. "You're new to town," he stated, not a question. "Name, Isabella Keller. I arrived on the afternoon stage." Her voice was steady despite her shaking hands. "He followed me from the hotel, said things no lady should hear, then tried to drag me into the alley." The sheriff noticed the torn sleeve of her dress, the bruises forming on her wrist. A small crowd had gathered, whispering and pointing. He sighed heavily, knowing how quickly rumors would spread. "Miss Keller, I'm afraid you'll have to come with me." He bent to retrieve the gun, noting it was a fine lady's Derringer. "Town council won't take kindly to a killing, justified or not. Am I under arrest?" Isabella lifted her chin, defiant despite her circumstances. "Let's call it protective custody for now." He gestured toward the jailhouse. "Silver Creek isn't kind to strangers who bring trouble, no matter how it finds them." As they walked the short distance to the sheriff's office, Isabella felt the weight of dozens of eyes following her. She'd left Boston to escape scandal, not to create a new one. Her father's gambling debts had left her with little choice but to accept her cousin's invitation to come west. Now she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The sheriff's office was sparse but clean: a desk, 3 cells with iron bars, and a small stove in the corner. Zachariah gestured to a wooden chair by his desk rather than the cells. "Sit. I need your statement." He pulled out paper and a pencil, studying her as he prepared to write. "Start from the beginning." Isabella recounted her arrival, the unpleasant encounter at the hotel restaurant, and how Mullins had followed her after she'd stepped out for air, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar surroundings. "I've never fired a gun at a person before," she admitted, staring at her hands. "My father taught me to shoot for protection, but I never thought I'd need to use it." Sheriff Powell's expression softened slightly. "Most who need to protect themselves wish they'd never had to." He set down his pencil. "You'll stay here tonight. Town's riled up and I can't guarantee your safety at the hotel. I'm your prisoner then. You're my responsibility until I sort this out." He stood, retrieving a blanket and pillow from a cabinet. "Cell on the end is cleanest." "Door stays unlocked." Isabella accepted the bedding, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. "What happens tomorrow, Sheriff? Judge Harper arrives in 3 days. Until then, you're in my custody." He hesitated. "Silver Creek's not a bad town, Miss Keller. But they'll be calling you trouble by morning." "I've been called worse," she replied, a bitter smile touching her lips. What Sheriff Powell couldn't know was that Isabella had come to Silver Creek with secrets of her own secrets that made one dead man in an alley seem like a minor complication. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting Silver Creek in gold and rose. Isabella awoke to the smell of coffee and the sound of male voices. She smoothed her wrinkled dress as best she could before approaching the front of the office. Sheriff Powell stood talking with a tall man whose broad shoulders and easy stance marked him as someone comfortable with hard work and open spaces. His dark hair curled slightly under his hat, and when he turned, Isabella was struck by eyes so intensely green they reminded her of the emerald necklace her mother had sold to pay for passage west. "Miss Keller," the sheriff acknowledged her presence. "This is Isaac Knight. He owns the Double K Ranch outside town." Isaac Knight removed his hat, revealing more of those dark curls. His face was sun-darkened and handsome in a rugged way, with a strong jaw softened by the hint of a smile. "Madam," he nodded politely, but Isabella didn't miss the curiosity in his gaze. News traveled fast in small towns. "Mr. Knight," she replied with as much dignity as she could muster in yesterday's torn dress. "I apologize for my appearance." "No need," Isaac said, his voice deep and melodic with a hint of southern drawl. "Sheriff was just filling me in on last night's incident." Zachariah poured coffee into a tin mug and handed it to Isabella. "Mr. Knight sits on the town council. Since Judge Harper won't be here for 3 days, we've been discussing your situation." Isabella accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warmth. "And what have you decided for me, gentlemen?" The men exchanged glances before Isaac spoke. "Sheriff Powell believes your account of what happened, so do I, but there are those in town who'll be calling for more than just a judge's ruling." "Mullins had friends," Zachariah explained. "Not good men, but men who stick together." "I can't stay locked in this cell for 3 days," Isabella protested. "No," Isaac agreed, "you can't, which is why I've offered my ranch as sanctuary until the judge arrives." Isabella nearly choked on her coffee. "Your ranch alone with you." "I hardly think that's appropriate." Isaac's smile broadened, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Not alone, Miss Keller. My sister Violet lives there too, along with our foreman and his wife, plus a handful of ranch hands who know better than to bother a lady." "It's the safest option," Sheriff Powell added. "I can't guarantee your protection in town, and the Double K is well defended." Isabella hesitated. Going to a stranger's ranch wasn't part of her carefully constructed plan, but neither was killing a man her first night in town. Her cousin Eliza wasn't due to arrive from Denver for another week, leaving Isabella with few allies. "Why would you help me, Mr. Knight?" she asked directly. "You don't know me." Isaac placed his hat back on his head, adjusting it with practiced ease. "Let's just say I've got no love for men who force themselves on women, and even less for a town that would punish a lady for defending herself." He looked at her with those striking green eyes. "Besides, my sister could use some female company that doesn't work for wages at the Gilded Lily Saloon." Despite herself, Isabella smiled at his candor. "When would we leave?" "Now would be best," Sheriff Powell interjected, "before the town fully wakes." Within the hour, Isabella found herself in Isaac Knight's wagon heading out of Silver Creek. The sheriff had provided her with a simple dress borrowed from the seamstress's shop, promising to settle accounts later. Her small trunk had been retrieved from the hotel and now sat in the wagon bed behind them. As they left the town behind, Isabella felt both relief and trepidation. The mountains rose majestically before them, the morning sun illuminating peaks still capped with snow despite the June heat. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost to herself. Isaac glanced at her, hands steady on the reins. "Different from where you're from, I imagine." "Very." "Boston has its charms, but nothing like this." She breathed deeply, savoring air untainted by city smoke. "Boston?" Isaac raised an eyebrow. "Long way to travel alone." Isabella turned slightly away. "Sometimes away is the only direction that matters." Isaac nodded, not pressing further. "Well, Miss Keller, whatever you're running from, you'll find Silver Creek has its own challenges, but the people can be good once they know you." "The sheriff called me trouble," she said softly. Isaac's laugh was unexpected and warm. "Sheriff Powell calls everyone trouble until proven otherwise. It's how he stayed alive wearing that badge for 10 years. He guided the horses around a bend in the road. Way I see it, trouble isn't always something to avoid. Sometimes it's worth the risk." Isabella studied his profile, wondering what kind of man would invite a woman who just killed someone into his home. "You take many risks, Mr. Knight. Call me Isaac." He smiled again, that charming dimple appearing. "And yes, madam, I do, calculated ones. And I'm a calculated risk." His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the road. "You're a lady in need." The calculation was simple. They traveled another hour before the Double K Ranch came into view. A large main house of solid timber construction stood proudly on a gentle rise, with a barn, bunkhouse, and several outbuildings spread across the property. Cattle grazed in distant fields, and closer to the house, a fenced garden burst with summer vegetables. As they approached, a woman emerged onto the porch. Tall and slender like her brother, Violet Knight had the same dark curls, though hers were worn in a practical braid. She waved as they drew near. "Didn't expect you back so soon," she called to Isaac, her curious gaze falling on Isabella. "And with company." Isaac halted the wagon and jumped down, offering his hand to help Isabella. The simple courtesy felt foreign after her turbulent arrival in Silver Creek. "Violet, this is Miss Isabella Keller. She'll be staying with us for a few days." Isaac's tone was casual, but Isabella caught the significant look he gave his sister. "Miss Keller, my sister Violet." Violet's eyes widened slightly before her face settled into a welcoming smile. "Any friend of Isaac's is welcome here. Come inside, you must be tired after your journey." The Knight home was unexpectedly refined for a ranch house so far from civilization. The main room featured comfortable furniture, colorful rugs, and bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes. A piano stood in one corner, sheet music open atop it. "Isaac plays," Violet explained, following Isabella's gaze. "Our mother insisted we both learn. I was hopeless, but he has a gift." Isabella couldn't imagine the rugged rancher's large hands moving delicately across piano keys. There was clearly more to Isaac Knight than first appeared. Violet showed Isabella to a pleasant bedroom on the upper floor. "It's not fancy, but it's clean. Bathrooms down the hall, we have running water," Isaac's pride and joy. He designed the system himself. Left alone, Isabella sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by how quickly her life had changed. Just 3 days ago, she'd been in Boston, fleeing creditors and the unwanted advances of her father's business associate. Now she was in Colorado, having killed a man and sought refuge with strangers. A soft knock at the door roused her from her thoughts. Violet entered, carrying a basin of steaming water and fresh towels. "Thought you might want to wash up before dinner," she said kindly. "And I've brought some clothes. We seem similar in size, though you're a bit more." She gestured vaguely at Isabella's curves. "Thank you," Isabella replied, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. Violet hesitated in the doorway. "Isaac told me what happened in town. You should know you're safe here. Your brother is very kind to a stranger." Violet's smile held a hint of mischief. "Isaac's always had a weakness for damsels in distress. Though from what he said, you handled your distress quite capably." After Violet left, Isabella washed away the dust of travel and changed into the borrowed dress, a simple blue calico that was remarkably close to her size. As she pinned up her hair, she caught her reflection in the small mirror above the washstand. The woman looking back seemed both familiar and strange, still Isabella Keller, but somehow altered by crossing the vast distance between east and west. When she descended the stairs, delicious aromas guided her to the kitchen where Violet was pulling a golden brown loaf from the oven. Through the window, Isabella could see Isaac chopping wood, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. "He always chops wood when he's thinking," Violet commented, following Isabella's gaze. "Says it helps clear his mind." "What's he thinking about?" Isabella asked before she could stop herself. Violet's knowing smile made Isabella blush. "Don't know. But he's been out there since we got back, and we've enough wood now for a month of Sundays." Dinner that evening was a simple but hearty affair: roast chicken, vegetables from the garden, and Violet's freshly baked bread. Isaac, cleaned up and wearing a fresh shirt, proved to be an engaging conversationalist. telling stories about the ranch and asking thoughtful questions about Boston that somehow never strayed into territory Isabella wished to avoid. As they finished Violet's apple pie, a comfortable silence fell over the table, broken only when Isaac spoke softly. "Miss Keller, Isabella, if I may, there's something you should know." His expression grew serious. "I received word while you were resting. Mullen's friends are asking questions in town. Sheriff Powell is concerned they might come looking for you." Isabella's stomach tightened with fear. "Here, it's unlikely they know where you are," he reassured her. "But as a precaution, I've doubled the night watch and alerted all my men." "I've put you both in danger," Isabella said, guilt washing over her. "I should leave." "Nonsense," Violet said firmly. "Where would you go?" "My cousin Eliza lives in Denver. She's traveling to Silver Creek next week to meet me." Isabella twisted her napkin nervously. "She and her husband have a small ranch nearby." Isaac leaned forward. "The Caldwell place. Eliza Crawford married Thomas Caldwell." Surprised, Isabella nodded. "You know them." "Tom Caldwell's a good man. We've done business together." Isaac looked thoughtful. "But their ranch is even closer to town than ours. You're safer here until the judge arrives." "I won't put your lives at risk," Isabella insisted. Isaac's hand covered hers, warm and calloused. "Miss Keller, no one's putting anything at risk. My men are well armed and loyal. This ranch has weathered Indian raids, rustlers, and worse. A few town troublemakers don't concern me." His touch sent an unexpected warmth through Isabella. She gently withdrew her hand, confused by her reaction. "You barely know me, yet you're willing to defend me." "I know enough," Isaac replied simply. Later that night, unable to sleep, Isabella stood by her window, gazing at the vast expanse of stars. The night was alive with unfamiliar sounds: the distant lowing of cattle, the chorus of insects, the occasional howl of a coyote. So different from Boston's constant urban hum, movement below caught her attention. Isaac walked slowly across the yard toward the barn, rifle slung over one shoulder. Even in the dim light of the quarter moon, his vigilance was evident. He was patrolling his property, protecting his home and her. Isabella pressed her fingers against the cool glass. What kind of man would risk so much for a stranger? And why did the sight of him make her heart beat faster? The next morning brought sunshine and an invitation from Isaac to tour the ranch. Violet provided Isabella with riding clothes and a sturdy mare named Daisy who seemed content to follow Isaac's stallion at an easy pace. "The Double K covers nearly 2,000 acres, Isaac explained as they rode. "My father started with just 100, built it up over 30 years. "And now it's yours," Isabella observed. A shadow crossed Isaac's face. "My parents died 5 years ago, influenza, left the ranch to Violet and me, though she lets me handle most of it. I'm sorry for your loss." Isabella's words were genuine. She understood grief, having lost her mother at 16 and her father just months ago, though his death had brought more complications than sorrow. They rode to a ridge overlooking a verdant valley where cattle grazed peacefully. Dismounting, Isaac helped Isabella from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "It's magnificent," she breathed, taking in the panoramic view. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch." Isaac stood beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. "Whenever I need perspective, I come here. And does it help?" With gaining perspective, he smiled down at her. "Usually, though lately I find my thoughts more confused than ever." The look in his eyes made Isabella step back slightly. "Mr. Knight, Isaac," he corrected gently. "Isaac," she conceded, "I'm grateful for your help, but I shouldn't be here. Once the judge clears my name, I'll join my cousin as planned." "Of course." His tone was carefully neutral. "Though the offer to stay longer stands, Violet enjoys your company and you might find you like ranch life." Isabella turned back to the view, unable to meet his gaze. "My future isn't something I've had much opportunity to consider lately." "What brought you west, Isabella?" he asked softly. "The truth, if you're willing." She hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. "My father died in debt." "Substantial debt. The family home, his business, everything was lost. There were men who offered solutions that came with unacceptable conditions. Understanding darkened Isaac's expression. "So you ran." "I chose freedom," she corrected him. "My cousin Eliza wrote that the West offered opportunities for women that the East never would, a chance to determine my own fate." "And what fate would you choose if all choices were open to you?" Isabella smiled sadly. "I've never had that luxury, but I suppose a home, work that matters. Perhaps someday a family of my own. Simple things that aren't simple at all," Isaac observed. "What about you?" she asked, turning the conversation away from herself. Surely the eligible young ladies of Silver Creek must set their caps for the handsome owner of the Double K. Isaac's laugh held little humor. "Oh, there've been interested parties, but not in me in this." He gestured to the land spread before them. "I've yet to meet a woman who wants the man more than the ranch." "Perhaps you haven't been looking in the right places," Isabella suggested. His gaze held hers. "Perhaps not, until recently." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then a distant shout broke the spell. One of the ranch hands was riding hard toward them, urgency in every line of his body. "Boss," he called as he approached. "Riders coming." 6 men from town, armed and looking mean. Isaac's expression hardened instantly. "Get back to the house," he told Isabella. "Tell Violet to secure the doors and ready the rifles." Isabella gathered her reins. "What about you? I'm going to have a talk with our visitors." The easygoing rancher was gone, replaced by a man prepared to defend what was his. "Go now." Isabella rode swiftly back to the ranch house, heart pounding with fear not for herself but for Isaac, confronting men who likely wanted revenge for their friend's death. She found Violet already on alert, rifle in hand. "Isaac sent me to warn you," Isabella explained breathlessly. "Men from town, I saw them coming," Violet replied grimly. "This isn't the first time we've had unwelcome visitors." She handed Isabella a shotgun. "You know how to use this." Isabella nodded, taking the weapon. Her father had taught her to shoot both pistol and shotgun, insisting that a woman should be able to defend herself. They watched from the window as Isaac intercepted the riders at the edge of the property. Though too distant to hear the exchange, the body language told a clear story. The men were aggressive, Isaac resolute. After several tense minutes, 5 of the 6 riders turned back, but one remained, gesturing angrily. "That's Clyde Jenkins," Violet said tightly. "Mullen's cousin and twice the trouble." The confrontation continued until Jenkins finally spat on the ground and wheeled his horse around, galloping after his companions. Isaac watched them go before slowly riding back toward the house. "They won't give up," Violet murmured. "Not men like that." Isabella's guilt resurfaced. "This is my fault. I should turn myself in, face whatever consequences come." Violet's hand gripped her arm. "No, Isaac wouldn't have brought you here if he didn't believe in you, and neither would Sheriff Powell." When Isaac entered the house, his face was a mask of controlled anger. "They want blood," he said without preamble. "Jenkins claims you shot Mullins in cold blood, that his advances were welcomed until you robbed him and murdered him." Isabella gasped. "That's absurd." "I'd never met him before, I know," Isaac cut her off gently. "But they're riling up the town, painting you as some kind of black widow who lures men to their deaths. Jenkins threatened to return with more men tonight. Do you think they'll really come back?" Violet asked. Isaac removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. "Not tonight. I made it clear what would happen if they set foot on Double K land without invitation, but they'll try something. Men like that always do." "I can't stay," Isabella said firmly. "Not if it means putting you both in danger." "You're not going anywhere," Isaac replied with equal firmness. "We'll ride to town tomorrow, all of us. I'll speak to the sheriff, make sure he understands the situation." "And if he doesn't help?" Violet asked. Isaac's expression was grim. "Then we'll find another way." That evening, after a quiet dinner, Isaac surprised Isabella by sitting at the piano. Without speaking, he began to play not a classical piece as she expected, but a haunting folk melody that seemed to capture the vastness of the western landscape and the loneliness it sometimes inspired. Isabella stood transfixed as his strong fingers moved across the keys with unexpected grace. When he finished, the final notes lingering in the air, she found herself near tears. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Did you compose it?" He nodded, a touch of vulnerability in his expression that she hadn't seen before. "I call it homecoming, wrote it after my parents died when the ranch truly became our responsibility." "It sounds like longing," she observed. It was. His gaze met hers. "Though lately I've been considering a different ending." Before she could ask what he meant, a sound outside captured their attention. Horses approaching at speed. Isaac was on his feet instantly, extinguishing the lamps. "Get upstairs," he ordered, reaching for his rifle. "Both of you." "I'm staying," Violet declared, already checking her own weapon. Isabella stood firm as well. "This is my fight too." A pounding at the door interrupted any further argument. Isaac motioned for the women to take positions away from windows, then called out, "Who's there, Sheriff Powell?" Came the reply, "Open up, Knight." Isaac cautiously opened the door to reveal the sheriff and two deputies, all looking trail-worn and serious. "Sheriff," Isaac greeted him, lowering his rifle slightly. "Wasn't expecting you tonight." Zachariah Powell removed his hat as he entered. "Wish it was a social call. Where's Miss Keller?" Isabella stepped forward. "I'm here, Sheriff. Has something happened?" "The town council held an emergency meeting this afternoon," Powell explained. "Jenkins and his friends have been spreading tales, turning sentiment against you. They're demanding immediate action." "What kind of action?" Isaac asked, his voice dangerously quiet. The sheriff's weathered face showed his discomfort. "They're talking about forming a posse if I don't bring you in, Miss Keller. Judge Harper sent a telegram saying he's delayed by at least 2 more days." "She's not going back to that jail," Isaac stated flatly. "Never said she was." Powell gave Isaac a measured look. "But she can't stay here either. Jenkins and his boys know where she is now." "Then where?" Violet demanded. The sheriff sighed heavily. "I've arranged passage on tomorrow morning's stage to Denver. Miss Keller can stay with her cousin until things calm down." Isabella felt a rush of relief mingled with unexpected regret. Denver meant safety, but it also meant leaving the Double K and Isaac. "I'll escort her to Denver myself," Isaac declared, surprising everyone. "Isaac, the ranch," Violet began, "can manage without me for a few days." His tone left no room for argument. "I won't have Isabella traveling alone with Jenkins and his friends watching the stage lines." The sheriff studied Isaac thoughtfully. "Might not be a bad idea to have company. My deputies and I will escort you to the stage depot, but we can't leave town with trouble brewing." Plans were quickly made. They would leave before dawn, taking a little-used trail to reach the stage depot from a different direction than expected. Isabella would stay with her cousin in Denver until Judge Harper had reviewed her case. As the sheriff and his men departed to rest in the bunkhouse before their early start, Isabella found herself alone with Isaac in the parlor. Violet had gone upstairs to help pack Isabella's few belongings. "Thank you," Isabella said softly, "for everything." Isaac stood by the window watching the night. "Don't thank me yet. We still need to get you safely to Denver." "Why are you doing this?" The question that had lingered since her arrival finally found voice. "Risking your life, your ranch for a stranger." He turned to face her, moonlight casting half his features in shadow. "You stopped being a stranger to me the moment I saw you in that jail cell, Isabella." "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know enough." He crossed the room to stand before her. "I know you're brave and proud and determined. I know you've faced hardship but haven't let it break you, and I know that in 3 days you've brought more life to this house than it's seen in 5 years. His words stole her breath. "Isaac, I'm not asking for promises," he continued. "I know you have plans, a cousin waiting, a life to rebuild. Just know that when you're ready, when your troubles are behind you, there's a place for you here, if you want it." Before she could respond, he bent and pressed his lips to her forehead in a gesture so tender, it made her heart ache. then walked away, leaving her alone with thoughts more tumultuous than when she'd first arrived at the Double K. The journey to the stage depot the next morning was tense but uneventful. Sheriff Powell and his deputies rode ahead and behind, with Isabella between them in the wagon driven by Isaac. They reached the depot just as the stage was being prepared, horses stomping impatiently in their traces. "Denver bound," the driver called. 5 minutes. Isaac helped Isabella down from the wagon, keeping his voice low as passengers milled around them. "The stage will reach Denver by nightfall. Your cousin will meet you," Isabella nodded. "I sent a telegram from your ranch. She'll be waiting." She glanced at the sheriff, who was scanning the surroundings with practiced wariness. "Do you think we were followed?" "No," Isaac assured her, "but caution serves us well." As the other passengers began boarding, Isabella found herself reluctant to leave. In just 3 days, the Double K and its owner had come to represent safety and possibility in a way she hadn't expected. "Your ticket, miss." The stage driver held out his hand expectantly. Isabella turned to Isaac one last time. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." His green eyes held hers. "This isn't goodbye, Isabella. It's just until we meet again." Impulsively, she rose on tiptoes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. Until then. The journey to Denver passed in a blur of dust and uncomfortable jolts as the stage followed the rutted road. Isabella's thoughts remained at the Double K, with the man who had offered her protection without question and possibilities without demands. When the stage finally rolled into Denver's bustling streets, Isabella spotted her cousin immediately. Eliza Crawford Caldwell was a petite woman with the same honey-blonde hair as Isabella, though hers was neatly arranged beneath a fashionable hat. Her face lit with recognition and relief. "Isabella," she cried, rushing forward as Isabella descended from the stage. "Thank heavens you're safe." "Your telegram was so vague. Trouble in Silver Creek. What happened?" Before Isabella could answer, a man's voice called her name. She turned to see Isaac Knight dismounting from his horse, having ridden hard to reach Denver shortly after the stage. "Isaac." Surprise and pleasure mingled in her voice. "What are you doing here?" He approached, dusty from the trail but smiling. "Couldn't let you face this alone." Eliza looked between them with undisguised curiosity. "Isabella, who is this gentleman?" "Eliza, this is Isaac Knight. He owns the Double K Ranch near Silver Creek." Isabella felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "He helped me when I needed it most." Recognition dawned on Eliza's face. "Knight, Thomas has mentioned you. You're the one experimenting with new breeding stock from Texas." Isaac's smile widened as he tipped his hat. "Mrs. Caldwell, your husband has some of the finest horses I've seen in Colorado territory." "Well," Eliza declared, taking in Isaac's obvious interest in her cousin, "any friend of Isabella's must join us for dinner. Thomas will be delighted to meet you." The Caldwell home was modest but comfortable, located on the outskirts of Denver. Thomas Caldwell, a soft-spoken man with intelligent eyes and a ready smile, welcomed Isaac warmly while Eliza helped Isabella freshen up. "So," Eliza whispered as she poured water for Isabella to wash, "tell me everything. Your telegram said you were in trouble, but clearly there's more to the story. That handsome rancher didn't follow you to Denver on a whim." Isabella sighed, knowing she owed her cousin the truth. She recounted everything: Mullen's attack, the shooting, her time at the Double K, and the threats from Jenkins and his friends. Eliza's expression grew increasingly alarmed. "Isabella, you could have been killed or worse, I know. But Sheriff Powell believes the judge will clear my name." "It was self-defense. And Mr. Knight," Eliza's eyes twinkled. "What's his interest in all this?" Isabella busied herself drying her hands. "He's been kind, that's all. Hum. Eliza's skepticism was clear. "Men don't ride hard on the heels of a stage to Denver for mere kindness, cousin. He looks at you like you're water in the desert." "Don't be ridiculous," Isabella protested, though her heart quickened at the thought. "We barely know each other." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Eliza replied softly. "Thomas and I courted for just 2 weeks before he proposed." Dinner was a pleasant affair, with Thomas and Isaac discovering numerous shared interests in ranching and horse breeding. Isabella observed Isaac closely, seeing how easily he conversed, how his face lit with passion when discussing the land he loved. "We should ride out to see your operation tomorrow night," Thomas suggested as they enjoyed coffee after the meal. "I've heard good things about your Hereford crosses." Isaac glanced at Isabella before responding. "I'd like that, but my priority is ensuring Miss Keller's safety." Jenkins and his friends aren't the type to give up easily. Thomas nodded gravely. "Eliza told me what happened. Disgraceful that a lady should face harassment for defending herself. Sheriff Powell thinks it will blow over once Judge Harper reviews the case," Isaac explained. "But until then." "Isabella is welcome to stay with us as long as needed," Eliza declared. "And Mr. Knight, we have a comfortable guest room if you'd like to remain in Denver until this is resolved." Later, as Isabella prepared for bed in the room Eliza had prepared, a soft knock at her door revealed her cousin bearing a telegram. "This just arrived for Mr. Knight," Eliza explained. "He asked me to bring it to you while he discusses something with Thomas." Isabella opened the message with trepidation. Knight stopped Jenkins and 5 men rode out toward Denver. Stop armed, stop making threats. Stop Powell following but delayed. Stop exercise caution. Stop Violet. Isabella's hands trembled. "They're coming here." Eliza read the telegram over her shoulder and gasped. "We must tell the men immediately." They found Isaac and Thomas in the study, deep in conversation over a map of the Caldwell property. Both men looked up sharply when Isabella entered with the telegram. Isaac's face darkened as he read. "I was afraid of this. Jenkins isn't one to let go of a grudge." "What can we do?" Isabella asked, fear tightening her chest. "I've brought this danger to your family, Eliza. I should leave, go somewhere they won't look." "Nonsense," Thomas interrupted firmly. "Your family, Isabella." "We protect our own." Isaac nodded in agreement. "Jenkins and his men don't know you're here specifically. They're guessing, following the stage route. We have time to prepare." Thomas moved to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal several rifles. "My property is well defended, Knight. Jenkins won't find an easy target here." The 2 men quickly formed a plan. The Caldwell Ranch hands would be alerted, the perimeter secured. Isaac would take first watch while Thomas ensured his wife and cousin were safely situated in the most defensible part of the house. As the men made preparations, Isabella pulled Isaac aside. "This isn't your fight," she whispered urgently. "You've done enough, risked enough. Go back to the Double K to Violet." Isaac's hands gripped her shoulders gently. "Isabella, listen to me. From the moment I saw you in that jail cell, something changed. I don't expect you to understand it, I barely do myself, but I'm not leaving you to face this alone." "Why?" she asked, searching his face. "Why risk everything for me?" His expression softened. "Because some things, some people are worth the risk." Before she could respond, he was gone, striding out to coordinate with Thomas's men. The night passed in tense vigilance, but morning brought no sign of Jenkins and his companions. By noon, everyone began to breathe easier. Perhaps the telegram had exaggerated the threat, or Jenkins had lost their trail. Isaac reluctantly agreed to accompany Thomas to see his horse operation, leaving Isabella with Eliza and 2 ranch hands standing guard. The women used the time to catch up properly, with Eliza sharing news of her life in the West and Isabella carefully avoiding too many details of her final months in Boston. "You know," Eliza observed as they prepared lunch, "when I invited you to Colorado, I hoped you'd find peace here. Perhaps even happiness. I never expected you'd find both within days of arriving." "I haven't found either yet," Isabella protested. "I'm still a fugitive from Silver Creek with men hunting me." Eliza smiled knowingly. "That's not what I see when you look at Isaac Knight." Before Isabella could formulate a response, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Expecting Thomas and Isaac returning, they were alarmed to see 6 unfamiliar riders approaching the house at a gallop. "Inside," one of the ranch hands ordered, reaching for his rifle. "Bar the door, madam." Isabella recognized Clyde Jenkins at the head of the group, his face twisted with anger even at a distance. Fear turned her blood cold as she and Eliza rushed inside, securing the heavy wooden door behind them. "Upstairs," Eliza directed, her voice remarkably steady. "Thomas keeps a shotgun in our bedroom." They had just reached the second floor when the first shots rang out, followed by shouts and the terrifying sound of the front door splintering. Isabella grabbed the shotgun Eliza indicated, checking that it was loaded. "Stay behind me," she told her cousin, moving to the top of the stairs. Below, Jenkins and two of his men had forced their way in, while gunfire outside suggested the ranch hands were engaged with the others. Jenkins looked up, his face contorted with rage when he spotted Isabella. "There she is." "The murdering bitch," Isabella raised the shotgun. "Leave now, Jenkins, the sheriff is on his way," he laughed, an ugly sound. "Sheriff's 2 hours behind us, plenty of time to dispense some frontier justice." "The only justice needed was served when your friend tried to force himself on me," Isabella replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. Jenkins started up the stairs, his two companions following. Hank wasn't no angel, but he didn't deserve a bullet. "An eye for an eye, Miss High and Mighty." Isabella fired a warning shot into the ceiling, halting their advance momentarily. "Next one won't miss." The standoff might have continued, but the sudden crash of breaking glass from the back of the house diverted Jenkins' attention. Moments later, Isaac burst into the foyer, Thomas close behind him. Both men had clearly ridden hard to return, and both held revolvers trained on Jenkins. "Step away from those stairs," Isaac commanded, his voice cold as winter. Now, Jenkins spun, caught between threats from above and below. For a terrible moment, Isabella thought he might shoot anyway, but self-preservation won out. He lowered his gun slightly. "This ain't your fight night. You made it mine when you came after her." Isaac's aim never wavered. "Drop the gun." A tense silence followed, broken by the distant sound of more riders approaching. Relief washed over Isabella as she recognized Sheriff Powell's voice calling out orders. Jenkins heard it too. With a snarl of frustration, he threw down his weapon. "This ain't over." "Yes," Isaac replied firmly, "it is." Sheriff Powell and his deputies quickly took control, disarming and arresting Jenkins and his men. The sheriff looked exhausted but satisfied as he accepted a cup of coffee from Eliza. "Judge Harper arrived in Silver Creek this morning," he informed them. "Reviewed the evidence and witness statements. Miss Keller, you're cleared of all charges, self-defense, plain and simple." Isabella sagged against the wall in relief. "Thank you, Sheriff. Don't thank me, thank Knight here." Powell nodded toward Isaac. His telegram detailing the events and character references made the judge's decision easier. Isaac shrugged off the acknowledgement. "I only told the truth." "Well, the truth has set our Miss Keller free," the sheriff remarked, "and Jenkins is facing charges for this little expedition. Won't be troubling anyone for a good long while." Later, after the sheriff had departed with his prisoners and the house had been set to rights, Isabella found herself alone with Isaac on the Caldwell's front porch. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant golds and reds, a fitting end to a tumultuous day. "So," Isaac began, leaning against the porch railing, "you're a free woman now, no charges, no pursuit." "Thanks to you," she acknowledged softly, "not me. Your own courage got you through this." He studied her in the fading light. "What will you do now? Stay in Denver with your cousin?" Isabella considered the question. Her original plan had been to live with Eliza and Thomas until she found employment in Denver, perhaps as a teacher or shop assistant. It had seemed like her only option when fleeing Boston, but now— "Actually," she said slowly, "I've been considering other possibilities." Isaac's expression remained carefully neutral. "Have you?" "Yes." She gathered her courage. "I've heard the Silver Creek area is beautiful. That there might be opportunities there for someone willing to work hard and start fresh." Hope kindled in Isaac's eyes. "Any particular part of the Silver Creek area?" Isabella took a step toward him. I've developed a certain fondness for the Double K Ranch. I understand the owner might be looking for someone to help with the accounts, perhaps teach his future children their letters. Isaac closed the distance between them, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. Future children, is it? The owner would need a wife for that. Yes, Isabella agreed, her heart pounding. I believe he would. Isabella Keller, Isaac said softly. Are you proposing to me? She laughed, the sound bright with joy and relief. I believe I am. Very forward of me, isn't it? Terribly forward, he agreed, smiling that smile that made his dimple appear. The sheriff would call it trouble, no doubt. And what would the cowboy call it? She whispered, her face tilted up to his. Isaac's eyes darkened as he drew her closer. The cowboy would call you wife, he murmured against her lips, and mean it with everything he is. Their kiss sealed the promise, tender at first, then deepening with all the passion that had been building since their first meeting. When they finally parted, breathless, Isabella rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The Double K has never had a proper mistress, Isaac said, his arms still around her. Violet tries, but her heart's in her books and scientific pursuits. She'll still have a home with us, Isabella assured him. I wouldn't have it any other way. Us, Isaac repeated, wonder in his voice. I like the sound of that. 3 weeks later, Isabella stood before a small gathering in Silver Creek's only church. Sheriff Powell had given her away, gruffly emotional beneath his official dignity. Violet served as her bridesmaid, radiant in blue silk. Thomas Caldwell stood as Isaac's best man, with Eliza beaming from the front pew. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss left no doubt of his feelings. The town that had once viewed Isabella with suspicion now cheered the union, won over by Isaac's unwavering support and the judge's official declaration of her innocence. The celebration at the Double K afterward was joyous, with neighbors from miles around coming to wish the couple well. As twilight fell, Isaac led his bride away from the festivities to the ridge where they had first truly spoken of their dreams. Mrs. Knight, he said, savoring the words. How does it feel? Isabella looked out over the land that was now her home, then back to the man who had claimed her heart so unexpectedly. Like I've found something I didn't know I was seeking. Isaac took her hands in his. When I brought you here that first day, I was already falling in love with you. I just didn't know if you could ever see a future in a place like this with a man like me. A place like this. Isabella gestured to the breathtaking vista before them, with beauty that makes my heart ache. With a man who saw me at my worst and still believed in me. She shook her head in wonder. Isaac, this is more than I ever dared dream of. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close against the evening chill. The sheriff still calls you trouble, you know. Says I don't know what I've gotten myself into. Isabella laughed, the sound carrying across the valley. And what do you say to that? Isaac's kiss was his first answer, tender and possessive all at once. When he finally pulled back, his eyes shone with promise in the gathering dusk. I say you're my wife, he whispered against her lips, and I mean it with all my heart. 1 year later, Sheriff Zachariah Powell rode up to the Double K with news of a bank robbery in Silver Creek. He found Isabella in the garden, her belly rounded with the child she and Isaac were expecting in the fall. Sheriff, she greeted him warmly. Isaac's checking the north pasture. Can I help? Powell dismounted, removing his hat. Just passing along a warning, Mrs. Knight. Had some trouble in town. Clyde Jenkins broke out of territorial prison with 2 others, robbed the bank this morning. Isabella's hand went protectively to her stomach. You think he might come here? He made some threats before they rode out, mentioned settling old scores. The sheriff's weathered face showed genuine concern. Thought you should know, thank you. Isabella remained calm despite the news. We'll be careful, Powell nodded approvingly. You've changed since I first met you, more settled, though Isaac says you've still got fire when needed. She smiled, thinking of the woman she had been and the one she had become. A woman needs both roots and fire out here, doesn't she? That she does. The sheriff replaced his hat. "I'll send word when we catch them. Shouldn't take long, we've got posses out in all directions." After Powell departed, Isabella continued her gardening, refusing to let fear disrupt the life she and Isaac had built. When her husband returned at dusk, she told him about Jenkins calmly, confident in their ability to face whatever came. That night, as they lay in bed, Isaac's hand resting protectively over their unborn child, he pressed a kiss to her temple. "Nothing will harm you or our baby, I promise you that. I know." Isabella curled closer to him. "We've faced worse and survived." "Much worse," Isaac agreed, his voice rumbling pleasantly against her ear. "And we'll face this together too." 3 days later, news arrived that Jenkins and his companions had been captured trying to cross into New Mexico territory. The threat removed, life at the Double K returned to its peaceful rhythm. As summer turned to fall, Isabella gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, with Violet and Eliza serving as joint godmothers. Sheriff Powell brought a hand-carved cradle as a gift, gruffly admitting that he'd made it himself. "For the little troublemaker," he explained, the twinkle in his eye belying his words. Isaac laughed, clapping the sheriff on the shoulder. "With her mother's spirit and her father's stubbornness, she's bound to live up to the name." Isabella, cradling their daughter, looked up at her husband with love that had only deepened with time. "What does her father call her?" Isaac's gaze, filled with devotion for both his wife and child, said everything before his words confirmed it. "Her father calls her precious, and her mother even more so." In the golden light of the Colorado afternoon, with her family gathered around her and the land she'd come to love spread out beyond their windows, Isabella Knight knew she had found far more than refuge in the West. She had found purpose, belonging, love. The East, with its refinement and rigid traditions, had never offered her what this wild, beautiful country had given so freely the chance to discover her own strength, and a man who recognized it as her greatest virtue. "Troublemaker," Isaac whispered teasingly against her ear as their daughter slept in her arms, and their family chatted quietly around them. "Wife," Isabella corrected him with a smile, leaning into the solid warmth of the man who had claimed her heart amid danger and uncertainty. "Always," Isaac promised, his kiss sealing the vow once more. "Always my wife." And in that moment, with the setting sun painting the mountains in shades of promise, Isabella knew that some kinds of trouble were worth every risk they brought, especially the kind that led to the greatest love she'd ever known.